Hello everyone and welcome to another Unreal Tournament stream. I'm Stacy Conley, Community Manager.
Jim Brown, designer.
Josh Marlow, environment artist.
Chris Perna, art director.
And today we're talking about art direction for Unreal Tournament. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for all of your posts, all of your messages. You guys are very interested in Unreal Tournament and we're very happy about that. We also have had a lot of art posted on DeviantArt, on the forums. And last week, no, actually it was 2 weeks ago, Chris posted the Scar concept art. Where did that come from?
That was, I was actually digging through some of the old UT3 concept art that we never used for the game. I found some really cool weapon stuff and some creature concepts and things like that. But I really wanted to use something to get the community kick-started. You know, nobody was really posting things. It was kind of at a slow burn at that point. I said, hey, let me post this and see if anybody digs it and
it kind
do.
of took off. Right?
Yeah. And a couple guys started modeling it and tweaking it, and guys chimed in, hey, how do we change this? What can we do? I think a Scar looks more like this. And the thread really became a really robust thread, and it's one of the better ones on there.
He's a really popular character, or she.
Right. And there's a lot of contention about what they should look like and stuff. And really, this isn't to dictate what it should look like. I really just wanted to kickstart the discussion and see if there were some talented people out there, and there are, which is fantastic.
And we have the original image up here. And
that was
okay.
that was a Jayhawk.
All right, we have the original image up here, and then the next one is another one. By who did this one?
By Jayhawk. These are both
Jayhawk also?
concept. He's an in-house concept artist that we have. A very talented guy.
And then we had the community start. And I'm going to apologize because I put everybody's name on the files. I know this guy, I think his name's Teriyaki.
Yeah.
Yep.
Teriyaki style.
Yeah.
I'm not going to remember everybody's names on these. They're on the files, so hopefully you guys can see them. But we really got some great art coming in.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is awesome. This guy, he's going into the muscle structure and the bone structure of these things, and they just came out. I was really shocked, actually, when I saw this stuff. It's a really, some of the stuff on there is professional quality, and it's great to see. And
this is all Teriyaki stuff, too. I think this is his as well.
Some of them were from somebody else, but one of the great things about the thread is the amount of feedback that we're getting and the openness to that feedback, which also took me by surprise,
Sure, they're helping each other.
Right, people are chiming in and they're helping and they're stating their opinions and stuff, which is great, Everybody's idea, there aren't really any bad ideas. There's not really any bad concept art. Just chime in, get your stuff up there. If you can draw stuff and use that to communicate, that's great too.
And this one was Jayhawk's original art, and somebody painted over it.
Right.
did
It's all
the
great.
armor
Yeah, it's all good stuff. This guy too. This is great.
Yeah, I love this one.
The regal pose of this is awesome. This too, a little bit stylized, but very cool nonetheless.
And this is also one of the stylized one.
Yeah.
Now these are great too.
Yeah, these are awesome. The colors and stuff that they use, very, very cool.
It's interesting to see because this is a very iconic creature to the Unreal franchise.
Right.
And there's so many, we ourselves haven't necessarily stuck with any one look.
Right.
So it's really cool to see how people are kind of just taking that base idea for a creature and kind of reinterpreting it, but still looks and feels like the Scar.
Yeah, absolutely. And the process has just been really cool because some of these I've taken and painted over, and the feedback loop is amazing. The guys doing the models are taking the feedback in stride, and they're
this one
changing
was
on a
done by a
dime.
cartoon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Guy.
So is that typically how you work? Like when you're working with Jayhawk or whatever, do you paint over or make suggestions?
There's feedback with all the artists, right? Typically when we do a concept phase, we have rounds of feedback. We'll start out with thumbnails and we'll start tweaking from there, and you'll see stuff start to rise to the top, and you'll start to iterate on that more and more and more. Rarely do you have an idea of what the final piece should look like. It's more of a very tight-knit iterative process. And as you go through with Epic, it stays small in the beginning, but then it opens up to designers and level guys, and more people on the team get to chime in. And
Right. So we've seen also
snowballs.
people do other things now. We have people making logo concepts,
right,
concepts for
right.
maps.
There's
and
tons of
everything.
great professional quality content coming online, which is really cool. And I was very surprised and happy about that. I mean, that stuff is, the logos. Some of them are
Some of the
awesome.
logos are
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah,
awesome. We
yeah,
have
yeah.
some logos that Henrik started a thread.
Yep.
And some of them are fantastic, and we're really looking at those as possibilities for use in the future.
Yes.
So, and is including some of this stuff too. So,
Yep.
Just
Very,
definitely-
very
there's
cool
a,
stuff.
There's a few weapons out there too, which kind of goes hand in hand with the weapon challenge that we issued last week, where people are, we asked them to start submitting weapons for us using blueprints, using code, but at the same time, just kind of independently, people started doing concept art and actually modeling a lot of weapons. So it's pretty cool to see the whole process kind of bubbling up and coming together.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any pointers? Now, Josh, you started in QA, and you went and started giving artwork to Chris, and people started looking at the stuff you were doing. Do you have any pointers to the people that are just starting out to get them started so they can go in and put their artwork on the forum?
Just post often, get as much feedback as you can. That's about the best way.
And take feedback without
Yes,
without
yes.
being offended or anything like that.
Right. There's
Yes.
really no bad art, right? I mean, and we'd like to see it all. It's
Yeah.
art is very subjective. So what one person likes, another person doesn't.
Obviously, you haven't seen my art.
Well, but I mean, my kids draw art. It's just there really isn't any bad artwork. It's all there could be germs of ideas that spark from just a rough thumbnail sketch on a napkin of stick figures. There could be something really cool there that somebody somewhere picks up on and uses and elaborates on, and
Right.
it's all good.
So is there a certain design style that we should be that the people out there should be looking at? Or is it, like the scar that you have here, do we want to have that exact version, or should
No,
we iterate?
I think it's going to be a collaboration with this stuff. I think we're going to need to iterate on a lot of it. There is no set design. The overarching visual philosophy for the project is going to be a visual clarity, and that generally means taking a look at UE4 and what it does well, which is our physically based materials and things like that, and using that to define that visual style, right? How can we get this incredible visual fidelity that games need to have today, but still keep the visual clarity and the target acquisition and other players and things like that.
So one of the big questions people have is, if I want to make a weapon, should I make it look like UT99? Should I make it look like UT 2004? Which should I do?
I think we should probably start with UT99. Keeping in mind that we feel like we made some mistakes visually on UT99, and I've explained that in the forums about it being dark and noisy and things like that. But some of the silhouettes and some of the shapes are a good starting place, and let's concept from there. Let's iterate and let's snowball.
And you've been answering questions. People can send you a
Yeah.
private message on
I
the
mean,
forum
I'm
and
the
say,
phone-
hey,
I'm-
I want to do this, but I'm afraid to post.
Right. I'm on the forums all the time. Don't be afraid to post anything. Can I am on the forums? Can you?
Yeah.
Can you send
Yeah.
me stuff direct? I mean, if you're embarrassed about putting it on the forum, send it to me.
We have
I'll
all
look at
levels of
everything.
skill.
Yeah, and I do look at everything. If I don't comment on it, I don't know that it's right for the project yet. But there might be some really cool ideas in there. So
More the merrier.
keep trucking. Yeah, the more the merrier. Absolutely.
Do you have any general tips about, like I saw a couple character concepts that had, the big flappy bits and
The
pieces of cloth
flappy
hanging
bits.
off, stuff,
Right.
stuff that we've played with in the past,
Right,
like on the
right,
Theron
right.
or even with Reaper and UT3, but we have said, like,
I loved Reaper, by
we
the
don't
way.
want to do this right
Right.
now, sort of thing.
Well, I mean that's really a
Big hair.
yeah, it comes down to like rigging and animation and stuff like that, and we're going to be hard pressed to get that stuff in. I generally would stay away from big flappy bits and things like that. When you're designing characters, you definitely want a distinctive silhouette, and you definitely want the visual clarity to be there. but we haven't had great success with the flappy bits. And that's not to say that if somebody comes up with this incredible cloaked character that we shouldn't try it, because we absolutely should. If it's one of our weak points, we should really push at it, and really try and bring that up to the forefront.
Well, you were talking about mistakes that have been made in the past. One of the things that you have been talking about is that some of the level design has been, the levels they're gorgeous, but there's like maybe a little bit too much stuff. Do you want people to maybe, when they start doing concept art for levels, maybe not have them so as intricate and detailed?
Right.
Or
I think it's important to keep the play spaces visually clear. Having a lot of clutter, a lot of things, a lot of nibbly, greebly bits, it clutters up the visuals, and it's hard to acquire targets within that. If we keep details tucked away and up high, I think that creates a better play space for everybody. It gives us the visual fidelity that we want, because you can still have cool, crazy pipes and awesome materials and all this crazy stuff. But it also keeps the play space a lot cleaner.
Yeah,
and
'cause I was
when I
looking at
mean
some of
visual
the-
clarity, when I talk about visual clarity, that's what I mean really. Visual clarity in the play space, right? We still want beautiful skyboxes and amazing vistas and things like that, but for play, average play, you want to keep those spaces uncluttered, I think.
yeah, because looking at some of Rick's and Josh's environment art now, it's a lot different than it was in UT3.
Yes.
I can see it's like, it's very clean.
Yeah,
It's real.
And I posted some comparisons. I was playing, I got on there and I started to play everything. I started to play UT99 through UT3. And what I noticed was just the visual clarity in 99 was, I mean, granted the technology was a lot different, so it was out of necessity that it was so sparse. But then we moved to UT 2004 and we started to add a little bit more mesh work and things, and we were just kind of playing around. And then UT3 came along, and I think Gears was getting a lot of attention at the time, and our production pipeline was tailored for that, and I think it was just natural that we kind of expanded on that, and we just went overboard, I think, and for the style of play that it was, we made a lot of things very dark and noisy, and that's not to say we're not going to have dark level or anything like that in this. I just think we need to tone it back a little bit, tone down the post process, open up the visual clarity, and make it better.
There were a lot of good dark levels in the original UT and UT99, but it's a lot of it's a matter of contrast, right? Right. The playable space versus the not playable space, and we were just talking earlier today about how it's a valid tactic that if you want to hide in the shadows, you can do that sort of thing in UT. But if the entire level is dark and hard to read, then that whole thing falls apart. So to me, like when you say too dark, I think that there was just a lot of grit and grime on everything in UT3.
Texture work.
So it wasn't
Yes.
just the number of polys and the things in the world. It was just like overwhelming visual heaviness.
And it all had the same amount, right? Characters had that detail as well. So when you put a character in a room like that, it just didn't stand out, right?
Yeah.
And it was like we were focusing on the trees, and nobody ever kind of stepped back and looked at the forest and said, "Hey, this isn't jiving." We're going to be very conscious of that moving forward, and I think
And we're getting a lot of feedback about that too.
Absolutely, and what we're doing with backdrops and levels and things like that, we'll have to be conscious of how do the characters stand out off that. How do the effects play into that? How cloudy do the effects make things? Things like that. Just to be really conscious of a crisp visual clarity and have a nice experience.
And I think we want to make it, I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, I may be speaking out of turn. We want to make it look like it's a stylized whole, that it all works together. But I personally, from the gameplay side at least, I don't have any issues with the fact that something like in UT99, the weapon pickups all flashed and glowed. Mm-hmm. So they totally stood out from the environment. But when you had it in your hands, it all fit together as a whole. But from a gameplay perspective, you could see
them.
You could see characters, you could
Right.
see weapons, you could
Right.
see pickups, those sorts of things.
We talked to Warren Marshall today, and he is going to have an art challenge on Polycount.
Yes.
And I apologize, I just got the details on this, but the projected dates are July 1st to August 4th. And we will be providing visual guide to UT Central themes and some level screenshots to serve as a basis for paint overs. And artists are encouraged to pick a theme, pick a screenshot, and then go for it.
Right.
So,
I mean, what we did was we don't have a ton of levels up and running yet, so we've got a few, and I took some screenshots. I gave them to Warren, and he talked to the guys over at Polycount, and we're going to get a challenge up and running. And really, what I'd love to just kickstart some really kick-ass concept art. You know, that's one of the things we're lacking, and it would really be great to define some of those styles. I gave them a visual bucket list, if you will.
Great.
We took a look at like UT 99 and some of the other UT games and said, what buckets do these fall into? I think Dave Spolinsky did it, right? And he called out sci-fi, Rundown Factory, and Nolly Ruin, you know, as the top three. And then there were offshoots of that. Like if you combine sci-fi with Nolly Ruin, you would get space castles, right?
Yes.
Like facing worlds and
Right.
things like that. So
And
if we
Bishop?
if we can define those buckets and then define an artistic or a visual style for those buckets, then it gives somebody just something for people to start building off of. You know, hey, here's kind of what Nolly Ruin should look like. Here's kind of what sci-fi should look like. You know, and if we had some kick-ass concept art for that stuff, it would be great.
oh, that's awesome. All right, so we were going to give them some screenshots, and they're going to be able to
Yeah,
just
I've
paint
already
over
done
them.
that, so we'll see. It's just a matter of getting those dates up and running. And,
Do we have any maps? Curse?
we've
that
got
one of them?
we've got Curse. I don't know, Jim. You want to talk about those?
Yeah,
little
right
bit.
now we just
MDM,
have
right,
Dave's.
deck?
Yeah, I did a very quick conversion of Deck and Curse just because those are kind of two of the early iconic maps that they've been in, you know, multiple variations of the game, and we got those in for scale reference. I don't know that we'll actually finish them. I kind of have a little bit of trouble envisioning a UT game without Deck, but that's just my personal bias.
That's my personal bias as well.
I think a lot of people feel that way. It's just like if we're going to do CTF, then Face is going to be there, right? But Dave's new map is actually probably the best starting
is.
point.
Really great.
That map visually could go in a lot of different directions, but I think
That's kind of his movement test map.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what Dave really nailed that I think is so important to Unreal is getting the sense of scale that's in there, knowing, you know, there's kind of just this feel of how wide a column should be, how wide a corridor should be to have valid combat there, how tall ceilings need to be, and that map is a really good example of at least where we are right now in terms of standards and things that we're looking for. And I think that all of that will transfer over also visually, because when it comes time for us to start adding the visuals to those maps, there's a lot of things that we look for in terms of, you know, modularity of the set and how those pieces fit together and how they work, and not doing too many crazy shapes that you have to build custom pieces for everything.
Yeah.
And Dave has this weird kind of genius about setting that kind of scale so that when it comes time to add visuals, you can just kind of plug and play and move
Well,
on.
it's great when you have a map that's made that doesn't have any skin or anything on it, no
Yeah.
environment, and it's still really fun to play.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And it's funny because I think, kind of was leaning a little bit more toward the sci-fi theme when he was building it, and, you know, just kind of listening him to the way he described it. But it also totally works industrial. It also totally works in terms of space castles if you look at it the right way. And it could be you convert it to just about
Could be an
anything
alley
in a
temple,
lot of
it could
different
be-
ways. So just having that one map and that is really kind of open to interpretation. So I'm hoping to see when we do this art challenge. We may have more up by then. But even just that one map alone there's a wide opportunity for people to do all
Right, and
sorts
that's what I'm hoping to see, actually, because a lot of times you get pigeonholed or you rat hole on a certain idea or a certain way you think things should be. And then the beauty of concept art and having a talented group of concept artists is that somebody will come out of left field and just totally change your mind on something. And that type of interaction is great, and that's the stuff that I really look forward to.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we're so zeroed in on our own little piece of the pie that somebody comes over here and says, hey, have you thought about this? And it's like, oh no, that's awesome.
Yeah, because that's hard with
Yeah.
a game like UT that everybody's so passionate
That's
about.
what's great, yeah.
But it's also a really good example of how we work internally, right? Like, I may create a layout for a map, but I'm terrible with visuals, and so I'll hand it off to somebody else, and they may go in a direction with it that I had no idea, and then it may go to somebody else for lighting, and then the guy who meshed it may have been thinking day, but he does night, and then he adds snow, and like all these crazy things start to happen, and how it all comes together is this kind of group effort of everybody sharing a vision.
That makes me think about Sanctuary from UT3. You could tell that was at the beginning. It was going somewhere else because they were showing the concept art, and then the finished product was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Even with like the models you make, like say I make a table and an LD turns it into like a castle or a spaceship or something. What? How did you
Yes,
think of that?
we like to abuse the models that
Yeah.
are given to us in very
That's
strange
awesome.
ways.
That's awesome.
Yes, yeah.
So there are great prizes with this too. At the end, the top entries will receive a round of feedback and iteration with you,
Yep,
with Chris
absolutely.
Perna.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
And they will produce a few more drawings with the same level and flesh it out with them.
Yep.
And anybody whose artwork we end up using, and they'll be credited as a concept artist in the final game.
Wow,
Which is
that's
pretty
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yay.
So I think we're on to Q&A if you guys are done.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had way too many questions, and I apologize. We are not going to get to them all, but we have some time to get through them. So if we don't get to your question today, we'll try to get to it another time. So the first is from Henrik, who is our logo artist. He said, what makes a good UT concept when it comes to characters or anything else? Should they match a specific direction in terms of the level of realism, for instance?
Yeah, I think what we want to do, like if you take a look at some of the modern games that are out there today, I mean, you definitely want to have a level of realism and visual fidelity that is on par with today's hottest titles, right? Hottest PC titles. So, that said, art is art, right? And like I said before, it's very subjective. And there really isn't, I don't really believe that there's bad art. Anything can be perceived, and there can be a germ of idea, like I said before, in anything. So post it all, hammer on it, and help us iterate on this thing, right? I can't pigeonhole everyone into an overarching direction yet, right? We just don't have it. So we have an idea where we want to go. If you take a look at some of the stuff we've done before, and if you take a look at UE4 and what it can do, its strengths and its weaknesses and things like that, although there are no weaknesses. But if you can see what the material layer system does and things like that, and the realism we can achieve now, that should give you an idea of where you should be going with the concepts. The lighting, the all this stuff plays into it. And so can a stick figure on a napkin define something? Absolutely. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea, and the execution might not be as professional quality as some people might think. But if there's an idea behind that, then we need to see it. So don't hold back any of that stuff.
And as we go along and we start putting things into the game, people can also get a better idea.
Right. And I also posted Jay's concept, the Scar, so this is kind of an internal quality bar, right? We do concepts like this, and he's actually he doesn't like this anymore, as most artists do. They don't like their stuff. He's grown exponentially, right? So I showed it to him, and he was like, "Oh man, why'd you let that out there?" So this is kind of our minimum bar internal, right? And I wanted people, this is kind of an example for people to see, hey, this is how we do it inside. Does this mean everyone has to do concepts like this? No, right? You can, if you can't draw or if you are sketching on a napkin or whatever it is, right? If you want to do a full-blown painting, that's fantastic as well.
We would love to see.
Yeah. It's however you get the idea across. If you do a Picasso style thing, right? But you call out the ideas, and they're good ideas, then that's valuable. There's value there.
So TWD from Buff, also known as the White Dragon,
Yep.
He has a really great question. He wants to know what your favorite artistic elements are from UT99 and Unreal. What things really you looked at and you said, wow, that's really, really amazing. I think for me it was probably the castles, the Nally stuff. The Nally stuff really, really spoke to me.
I like that too. It was all the visual flair stuff. My absolute favorite thing when I fired up Unreal and UT are the fire textures. I had never seen, like, I was playing
Yeah.
Quake and all this stuff, and then you fire up Unreal, and there's like this crazy torch thing that was like Christmas treed out in slow motion, and it had this wonderful procedural thing going on, and the water, the water had ripples in it. It just looked awesome, So
Yeah, the water was crazy.
those are some of my memories back then, and I was also drawn to the castle, and especially the initial castle fly through in the beginning.
Right,
I
that was
think
beautiful
Caudle.
with
I think
the-
Shane Caudle did that.
The reflections.
amazing.
Yeah. The opening for Unreal, right? So yeah, those are fond memories for me.
Well, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what were the biggest artistic failures from past games you'd like to avoid? I think we talked about that with UT3. Where things were just a little bit too busy. And
Right. I think that's the case. I think we went overboard with with some of the diffuse textures and the normal map stuff, and just did a lot of noise, and we're going to tone a lot of that stuff back.
And post-process.
Yes, post-process too.
Post-process.
Yeah.
The models were amazing.
Oh,
Just
some
looking
of the
back
models
at,
were
Kevin's and
fantastic.
Peter's,
Yeah.
Necker's
yeah.
stuff.
Yep.
Still blows my mind.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just that the post. It was really kind of the post process. I think overall, right? It just crushed the visual clarity. It just washed it out. So there was no depth anymore, and yeah, the quality of the lighting has changed a lot as well. So that should offer a big visual boost for this next one.
awesome. How do we ensure that assets from various artists in the community still look like they go together? That's a really good question too. These are all from the White Dragon. How do we make sure that his Scar is going to look good with somebody else's Lauren and somebody else's Brock?
Right. I mean, that is a good question. We just have to be mindful, and I think some of this will come from the community. I think they'll weed out some of the things that aren't as strong or that don't belong, and some of it will be us curating it to a certain extent. And just as we move along, we should be able to define a visual style that it should snowball and it should start to show through eventually.
Right.
And hey, here's the overarching visual direction. You can go nuts because Unreal is so diverse and all that stuff, but please keep it within this umbrella of, don't use red or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Stuff that we define. And I think it's too early on to actually call that out right now, but as we progress, it will start to solidify.
Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Grumpy Sir, how many characters do you see making it into the original release? 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, we haven't really discussed that. I have no idea. If we get a lot of really awesome characters, maybe there'll be more. I really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to depend on our bandwidth and the quality of character art that we get. I
So
think.
when we put out the game, how many will we have for ourselves, or we don't know that either? When we
Yeah, I
just
don't
put
know.
out that first.
Yeah, I haven't talked about it, so I really don't know.
So it's one of my favorite questions. Will you be bringing back some of the old Unreal characters like the Juggernauts, Thunder Crash, Egyptians? There's so many out there.
Yeah.
Do we have any ideas
Chris is really
yet?
big on the Egyptian.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know he
absolutely.
loves the
Favorites.
Egyptians.
Yeah, they're teasing me. I think yes, absolutely. I just don't know which ones or how or when, right? But I think that's part of the original DNA of Unreal, and I think we definitely need to include
Right.
people's favorites,
Like the
and
necklace.
stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know which ones they are. I don't know what we're going to be able to do at this point. So.
I'm leaving now if you
But
can bring the necklace.
if I had to imagine, yeah, we'll be doing a lot of that, which would be great.
I think a lot of it will depend on a lot of different factors too. Like what diversity are we going to have in the environment sets as well will influence a lot of that. UC2 was very, very focused. Unreal Championship 2 was very focused on the Egyptian set. And so we did a lot of Egyptian characters and not much, and a few others, but it wasn't as diverse as some of the other games. UT 2003, for all of its flaws, was there was the sports theme, and that really influenced the way those characters looked and the diversity that we had there. So I would imagine that a lot of it comes down to really you guys as well, like Chris was saying, and that the more characters we can get built, the more we can get into the game.
Right.
And because UT is the way it is, we're going to have pretty much a skeleton and a hitbox that everybody's going to have to conform to. And so the models that go on that, you know, are going to have to fit that same general shape, but you can still get a lot of diversity within those parameters.
Sure.
And hopefully, you know, like doing the skeleton is something in theory we'll only have to do once, and then you guys can just create models and models and models and models to go on that. And I would love to see as many teams as possible.
Yeah, same here.
Yep.
Okay, let's see. Sir Briz, this is basically the same thing too. Here's the there's a whole paragraph before this, so you can go back and read it later.
I did read it. I read it,
Basically,
yeah.
basically the question is there any plan for art leads on this game to try to get the community contributions to contain the same elements that make the levels feel like they were made for the same purpose? So basically, it's the same thing.
Right.
How are we going to make everything cohesive?
Right, and I think it's going to be an overarching visual direction that comes on as we go, and we'll start to define style guides and have certain rules for, you can only make a door so wide, and you can do this, that, and the other thing, and we'll start to corral people into building Lego type sets and things like that, and that'll kind of define itself as we move along.
And last but not least, GeoDave asks a technical question. He says, "Can we have a guideline? Can we have a guideline on the poly triangle counts for the content? Also, the approximate LOD levels you're working to. Also, the minimum, maximum bone count for your characters, weapons, vehicles. I know environment should be included, so a bit of info on this might help as well."
Yeah, I was talking to Kevin Lanning a little bit about this. Hey, Kev, before the stream, and he was saying, you know, about a Gears character would be safe. I know some of our other games are kind of pushing beyond that. That's the UT3 character. Like I was looking at Malcolm today in UT3, and he's got about 8,800 verts, something like that. So
That's amazing.
if we went to 12 to 15,000 verts, that might not be so bad. 25,000 polys. From what I understand, we're more material bound. Do you know anything more about that, Josh?
As far as the
As far as the technical specs of a character or something, or whether we're poly or material bound or
I believe
like that.
we have 15 texture samples or so for
Okay.
that. But
Okay.
some of our internal stuff, they get pretty crazy.
Right,
So
right.
I suggest for users to open up our sample content. Comes with UE4 and
That's a great idea.
for
Check out some of the
environments.
characters
And
and
we
that
just had a
stuff, yeah.
vehicle game that came out. And just see.
I've seen
triangle
some vehicles
counts and that.
posted on the
Yeah,
forums.
absolutely. Yeah,
There's some
yeah.
really cool stuff to come out of that, but that should give you kind of a baseline.
Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of iteration. We're going to see, okay, it's going to depend on how many characters are on screen, what the weapon poly counts are, what the effects are, you know, all that stuff. There's going to be a lot of dependencies on that. So there may be some flux there when we go to start playing and getting everything in.
Okay. All right, thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Somebody mentioned to me on a tweet that they would like this to be a podcast on for every week so they can listen to it. If you would like that, let us know either through Twitter or on the forums. If we have enough need for it, then we'll also make this a podcast. Make sure you join us tomorrow at Twitch TV/Unreal Engine at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for our Unreal Engine stream, where they'll be talking about
I don't know.
Speed Tree. That's right. I knew
nice.
that. Just whoosh. And I believe Dana's going to be on that one tomorrow. Yes. Dana Callie will be on that stream tomorrow. And also, we're going to put a slide up where to follow us. And we want to thank everyone for joining us. And this will be on YouTube soon, and we'll let you know on Twitter when it's live. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.